Let's jump right into this explainer, because today we're unpacking a story that is absolutely fascinating. On the surface, sure, it's a simple fable about a bird, but really, it holds a powerful mirror up to the invisible cages we build around ourselves. It's called The Eagle Who Remembered the Sky. But before we get into the story itself, I want you to ask yourself a pretty fundamental question. Are you an eagle living like a chicken? Now, I know that's a provocative thought, but seriously, have you ever felt like you possess this immense, untapped potential, yet you find yourself just kind of going through the motions of a much smaller life? Well, that exact tension between who we are and who we believe we are is exactly what we're talking about today.
So let's start with part 1, A Life on the Ground, or the origin of the farmyard eagle.
Our story kicks off with a really incredible and honestly a pretty tragic case of mistaken identity. See, this young eagle wasn't born on the ground. In its earliest days, it actually fell from its nest high up in the mountains during a violent storm, tumbled through the air and landed smack in the middle of a busy farmyard. And for the most crucial developmental years of its life, it was raised entirely by chickens. It absorbed their habits, learned their ways, and totally took on their identity.
And what does a chicken's identity actually look like? Well, as this young eagle grew, it just mimicked exactly what it saw around it. It scratched the dirt, it pecked for its food in the ground, and when it came to its own magnificent wings, it literally only flapped them enough to hop over tiny obstacles in the yard. Growing up, the eagle adopted this exact, highly limited definition of what its life should be. It completely and unconditionally believed it was just another farmyard bird. Its entire reality was shaped by its environment, not its biology.
Moving on to part 2, we get a glimpse of the sky and the encounter with true potential.
One totally ordinary day in the dirt, something extraordinary happens. An old eagle soars high above the farm, just gliding effortlessly on the air currents. The young eagle stops its scratching, looks up into that vast blue sky in pure amazement, and asks, "Who is that?" It felt this stir, a spark of recognition that it couldn't quite put into words, but it demanded an answer.
Well, the chickens were incredibly quick to answer. "Oh, that's an eagle," they said, "the king of the sky." But they immediately followed that up with a massive dose of limitation. They told him, "Don't worry about that. We could never do what he does." See, they were projecting their own limitations onto the young eagle, completely blind to the fact that the old bird soaring above represented the exact untouchable peak of what this young bird could actually achieve.
And guys, here is the real heartbreaking turning point. Tragically, the young eagle just accepted the chicken's limiting narrative as the absolute truth. It trusted the community that raised it way more than the instincts stirring inside its own chest. The eagle believed them. It completely dismissed that magnificent sight, buried its wonder, and continued living its life exactly like a chicken, grounded.
Which brings us to part 3, The Courage to Jump, and the Mentor on the Hill.
Because a false identity can only hold you down for so long when true potential is there, right? Years later, the status quo finally breaks. A wise farmer happens to observe the yard and spots what the chickens couldn't: the eagle's incredibly powerful wings and those piercing, sharp eyes. Recognizing this immense wasted potential, the farmer literally takes the eagle away from that comfortable dirt, carries it all the way to the top of a massive hill, and delivers a powerful challenge. He says, "You were born to fly. Stop believing what others have told you." He's directly commanding this bird to unlearn a lifetime of conditioning.
Now, standing on the edge of that steep hill, looking down at the tiny world it used to know, the eagle is absolutely terrified. And think about it, it makes sense. It has the anatomy of a king of the sky, sure, but it has the lived experience of a farmyard chicken. It had never actually flown. So completely gripped by fear, it asks the ultimate question of self-doubt, a question I think we've all asked ourselves at the edge of something new. What if I fall?
And the farmer? He just smiles at this trembling bird and replies, "But what if you fly?" It's such a brilliant pivot. The farmer counters that paralyzing fear of failure with the boundless, awe-inspiring possibility of success. He shifts the eagle's focus entirely away from the danger of the ground and right up to the promise of the sky.
And what happens next is just a profound transformation. First, the eagle spreads its wings, literally trembling with fear as the wind hits its unfamiliar feathers. Then, it takes the leap. For a heart-stopping second, it just drops. But then, instinct takes over. Those massive wings finally catch the wind, and it starts climbing, higher and higher, until that familiar, limiting little farmyard looks tiny down below.
As it climbed into the clouds, feeling the air rush past, the eagle had this massive, life-altering realization about its own inherent strength.
It realized for the very first time in its entire life that it had never actually been weak, not for a single second. It had simply forgotten who it was. The strength was literally always there. It just lacked the environment and the belief to actually use it.
All right, let's wrap this up with part 4, Breaking Your Limiting Beliefs, where we deconstruct the lesson.
So what are the real takeaways from the eagle's journey here? First off, your beliefs hold you back far more than your actual abilities or circumstances. The eagle had the ability the whole time, right? The belief was the cage. Second, never let the opinions of others decide how high you can fly. The chickens meant well for sure, but their reality simply wasn't the eagle's reality. And third, courage brings breakthroughs. You cannot discover what you're truly capable of without facing the very real fear of the drop. Our biggest obstacle is almost never where we come from. It's our own internalized belief that we just can't do more.
The crucial point we need to draw from all of this is that unlocking your potential isn't about suddenly acquiring magical new skills out of thin air. It's about actively defying the limitations placed on you by others or even by yourself and taking that terrifying first leap. As the fable reminds us, all it really takes is the courage to spread your wings and just try.
I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to take away from this explainer today. You might actually be much closer to your own breakthrough than you think. The wings are already there. The sky is already there. The only variable left in the equation is your choice. So, looking at the edge of whatever hill you're standing on in your life right now, are you ready to jump? Thanks for joining me, and I highly encourage you to reflect on what your own farmyard might be today. Catch you next time.